Hey, Cub fans. Welcome to another check-in with Bricks Behind the Ivy. I am your hostess, the mostest, Jeff Candid Cubs Rogowskis, rocking the live sesh this evening as we catch up on all things winter meetings today. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a super fun live session last night. Hoping we can have just as much fun this evening as we did yesterday. And feel free to drop questions, comments, concerns in the chat. I will be monitoring all the chats. We are currently live on Twitch, YouTube, X, Instagram, and Streamlabs. So this is kind of a new setup for Bricks Behind the Ivy. And this is the intent is to kind of, first of all, test this technology for our live episode that we're planning for tomorrow evening, which Pat is going to join me. And then also to just kind of talk to the up to the minute news that are going on in Cubdom, as the winter meetings are such a big part of baseball offseason, and it's really the heaviest transaction time of the year for the Cubs to look to improve their roster. So thanks so much for jumping in. A little bit different tonight. Happy to have folks hop into the stream this evening. Just let me know in a message and I can send you a link. We can get you onto this thing and we can talk out some Cubs. Otherwise, just leave some questions in the chat, and you know, ultimately we will kind of start with any questions we see, and then I'll just kind of do a rundown of how I'm seeing the winter meetings progress so far. And right away we got Coach Culp coming in with the haymaker, and this is something I wanted to address, so thanks for the question, Coach Culp. If you are not subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, go over there, hop over there, subscribe to the podcast. We'd really appreciate it. Make sure you download the latest episode with Mr. Mike Waller from Cubs PS Plus, where we talk about possible trade targets. But yeah, I thought this was a super interesting comment that came out today from Jed Hoyer. He was doing his press junket today, as most managers do their press junket as part of the winter meetings. And, Chad came out and said that, if there was a player that they were interested in paying that type of money for, the money would be there, but Juan Soto wasn't it. Yeah, that definitely came as a surprise. I felt like a little bit that was Jed Hoyer coming out swinging. He's obviously, like, the writing is right there on the wall. We know the situation he's in. We know that at the end of the day, like, his job is potentially on the line. So we do have to think about that. And then we also have to think about, um, you know, um, Jed's Jed's thought process in usually acquiring different stars. So, I think it'll be super, super interesting that, at the end of the day, like, if the Cubs were interested. So, there's two things that immediately came to mind when I saw that. The first one was, are the Cubs engaged in a player that they would be more interested in giving an extension to, a la Kyle Tucker, a la a Vlad Guerrero Jr. Are those players that they're trying to acquire through a trade? And given, I guess, Vlad Guerrero Jr., we could argue on whether or not he has a true defensive position and whether or not he needs to just stick at DH. But he does play first base. He has won a Gold Glove over there. If you talk to Blue Jays fans, they're not like super excited about the Gold Glove that he won over there. It's not like anything spectacular defensively that really earned him that Gold Glove. But then you look at Kyle Tucker, who is a very good defensive outfielder, 30 stolen bases, 30 home run guy, 27. Really would fit the mold of like playing all the aspects of the game. Maybe that's the guy the Cubs, go after and are willing to pay a high dollar contract to. So, very interesting comment. I think I went on, if you listen to this week's Bricks Behind the Ivy episode, if you had not downloaded it wherever you listen to podcasts or subscribed, go check that out. I went on my Juan Soto rant, which is ironically a little bit late because, Juan Soto signed on Sunday evening. But, when we recorded these things and, Sometimes like on the editing floor, I'm a one-man band. When we recorded these things, it wasn't our intent at the time, for these things to come out right when Juan Soto signed, but I went on a pretty long, I think it was like 7 minutes straight, unrehearsed, of, you know, really, really, really laying into Jed Hoyer about signing Juan Soto. And, he's a generational talent. The Cubs have the money to be involved. And, I think now that, the smoke has cleared and we know, Steve Cohen was not to be denied. Jeff Passan said on Buster Olney's podcast this morning that this is a bad baseball deal, which, like, objectively from the outside, like, it's ludicrous money, $51 million a year. Like, we can sit here and if you want me to take out my calculator, which don't worry, I've got one right here at my desk. Um, we can talk about how much money that guy's getting per at bat, how much money he's getting per, per breath, all these different things. It's just, at the end of the day, it feels weird where a player like this, a generational talent, just like Shohei Ohtani last year, and the Cubs were not involved. So, yeah, I think that's, to me, something that I'm disappointed. But, at the end of the day, we're sitting here. Juan Soto's off the board. So let's talk about like what we do know and what we potentially want to see from the Cubs this offseason. And I think that's a much better conversation to have in this moment than for us to sit here and discuss a bunch of things that aren't going to happen. So I really don't want to dwell on Juan Soto much longer. There's nothing interesting to say there. I can hold my breath and stomp my feet and continue to be pissed off about the Cubs not being involved. And like I'm pissed off that the Cubs were not involved. It annoys me greatly that that is the decision they decided to make. And at the end of the day, like yeah, it wasn't my it wasn't my call, obviously. It'll be interesting to see, how they move forward and what they do at the position. Yeah, thank you so much for the 108 of you that are watching right now. Just awesome. Thanks so much for, being a part of this today and, being a part of the Brickhead family. Shout out to all of our Patreon members that subscribe on Patreon. They get the episodes on Friday. All the funds from Patreon are used to push into reach. We put them into YouTube ads to get continued reach for Bricks Behind the Ivy. As additional revenue comes in for that, gives us an opportunity get a larger audience. Hopefully, it gives us an opportunity to get different guests, more robust guests. And we've been very lucky to get the guests we've gotten on Bricks Behind the Ivy, hoping to kind of increase the talent pool and the guest pool in 2025 as season 1 of Bricks Behind the Ivy comes to a close. Yeah, let's just do kind of a real quick check-in of the different Cubs news that's out there this evening. A lot of it is, I would say, I don't know if rehash is the correct word I want to use, but it's not necessarily new information that we now know. It has a lot more to do with, we have updated information on some trades. We have some, additional information that we can see in different like rumor mills and such that we saw on the trade front. So just really, really excited to kind of talk about what the Cubs are doing. So let's start with Jed Hoyer's presser, Craig Counsell's presser, and some of the additional information we learned there, because I think that's kind of a good place to start. So Craig Counsell had his junket at 4 o'clock today. They did stream it live on the Marquee Network. And yeah, there were some interesting comments in there. They had talked to Craig Counsell about different opportunities to improve this team. And he was, as usual, pretty coy. Obviously, he doesn't want to show too much information, but he did imply that this roster would be very different in 2025 than it was currently constructed. another piece of information that I thought was super interesting was a health update on Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson was playing with sports hernias for apparently a good portion of last year, which to me kind of changes, the analysis of what Dansby Swanson's season was. Because, at the end of the day, um, like personally, I cannot play with a sports hernia because I am a baby, not a professional athlete, not getting paid millions of dollars to do it. But he was able to play through that pain, and like to me, that's insane, like absolutely insane that he was able to do that. So, you know, I think we can then expect, like, if he's fully healthy in 2025, that we're going to see the production that we expect. So, like, Dansby Swanson was near a finalist for the Gold Glove and put up, I would say pretty Dansby Swanson ish numbers in 2024 while hurt. To me, that is a testament to the type of player he is, and it's really, really cool that he was able to kind of work through that. Now, I think that kind of leads into another concern I have for the Cubs offseason in 2025, and that is like getting a player that is going to be able to spell Dansby Swanson, from time to time on, like, to give him some days off so that he continues to stay fresh. I feel like, we're in a different era of baseball. We're not in like the Iron Man era. And Dansby Swanson is very much one of those guys that prides himself on playing 162 games, regardless of what it means to his body and potentially what it means to his team. And I think, the Cubs kind of need to address that this offseason and look at, the opportunities to find a guy or a player, that is going to be able to defensively, you know, back up Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson to kind of rotate them in them out, keep them fresh, as because it's really ultimately going to be about that tournament at the end of the season, which the Cubs like are so desperately trying to move themselves in the position to actually get back into it, because currently that is evading them at a really really frustrating amount of time. It feels like since the Cubs kind of fell out of their competitive window. I would argue it started in 2019. 2020 ended up being, the Mickey Mouse year, COVID. In 2021, they really stopped trying to compete. So in, 4 years' time, 3 years' time, Jed Hoyer has, transformed this farm system's reputation and has put together a very consistently average baseball team. And I think, as fans, we're really looking for him to kind of turn that corner. So hopefully, this is kind of the year that the Cubs do that. All right, another thing that I do want to see in 2025, another thing that we heard today is Cubs need more pitching. And Jed Hoyer seemed to imply strongly in 2025 that there was going to be an additional focus on pitching. So where is that going to come from? Is it going to come from the long rumored trade with the White Sox, potentially a Garrett Crochet? Is that going to involve a third team like the Mariners? Like it almost got across the finish line, and we're going to see, the Cubs take, another step in a direction that makes them a more competitive team in 2025. Are they going to push those resources now towards Houston, who potentially are listening on Framber Valdez and Kyle Tucker? Um, who knows? Only Jed Hoyer knows. But I think the big chip that is going to get a lot of focus if Jed's been doing, his sales pitch correctly is Cody Bellinger. I think the immediate windfall of Cody Bellinger coming off of, still being on the board and Juan Soto coming off the board is immediately last night after Yankees fans, Yankees rumors of Yankees being interested in Cody Bellinger. So I see the fit for the Yankees roster. I see why they would be very interested in Cody Bellinger. He's a left-handed power hitter that would play very well in that ballpark. He's versatile. He can play the outfield. They've had kind of a hole at first base. He could play first base for them. I think where it falls apart for me is the Cubs fit in the return. I just don't see the Yankees giving up, top tier prospects to discuss, like Cody Bellinger coming to their team. I think what they're going to try to offer is maybe being able to take on that contract. But if the Cubs are getting rid of Cody Bellinger just to get rid of money, unless they immediately redeploy that money to something that's incredibly useful for 2025 and beyond, I just don't see the value. As we talked last night on our chat, ultimately, we saw we saw a lot of work that needed to be done from to be able to spell and to be an additional asset to kind of be insurance for Michael Bush and insurance for PCA. Do we believe the second half of PCA season is what we should believe, or should we believe that it's kind of more in the middle? Will there be additional regression, not similar to his start in the major leagues, but more regression that is, back towards a, reasonable production, not the really hot hitting he had at one point. And then Michael Bush, not a typical rookie, not what you're looking to see. Like when you're looking at rookie of the years, he's a little bit older. So has he had his adjustment period as part of last year? We did see that strikeout rate balloon and then kind of come back to earth, and would like to see the walks and the power return. Defensively, he was very strong at first base, but the Cubs are looking for more slugging. They need another hitter for this lineup, and how does Michael Bush fit into that game? So, at the end of the day, it'll be a long week until the Cubs do what I would say is a very meaningful move. I think the Cub fans are absolutely starved for something of, absolute pertinence, absolute like headline grabbing information that is, or player that is going to really shift the dynamic of this offseason. So I think I'm going to shift to a Twitter space so I can get more interaction from folks. Thanks so much for letting me just kind of like vent and rant on what's going on in the Cubdom. We'll stay tuned and see if there's any news that breaks this evening. But gonna hop over onto Twitter Spaces. Thanks so much for your time. Make sure you tune into the Bricks Behind the Ivy live episode tomorrow evening. It's gonna be wherever you're watching this right now. Instagram. It's gonna be on. It's gonna be on X. It's gonna be on YouTube. It's gonna be on Twitch. So make sure you're checking us out there. Subscribe to our podcast. If you want to help Bricks Behind the Ivy review the podcast wherever you're listening to the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, comment under the videos to help increase our reach on the videos. And if you're really feeling super saucy, make sure you join the Patreon. We've got a free tier, and we've got some paid tiers that come with some perks, including Bricks Behind the Ivy merch quarterly for our highest tier, the Ivy League tier. So thank you so much. Go Cubs, and I'll talk to you guys soon if you want to hop on Twitter.